Hoffenheim is a village of just 3,191 people in the German state of Baden-Württemberg. That's smaller than the village where I live in East Yorkshire. This is where my local village team play their home games, 10 minutes from the front door of my house, in a division known as the Humber Premier League. That is the 11th tier of English football, a mere 10 divisions below the Premier League, where some matches can draw literally dozens of fans. Not at this time of year, of course, it's much too cold, but perhaps in May or August. I've actually trained with them a couple of times. I was told that I was only good enough for the reserves, who play 2 divisions below the first team. But in the end, I decided that they might take things a little too seriously for the 13th tier, after someone called me a C-bomb for taking a heavy touch during a rondo. This is pretty much the archetypal village football club. A field, 2 goalposts, some white lines, not like that, and a bunch of park players playing for the love of the game and typically having to pay for that privilege. Not all village football clubs are created equal though. Not all that long ago, Hoffenheim were virtually indistinguishable, apart from speaking German, to my local village club. But in a remarkably short space of time, these former nomarchs have gone from being a 9th tier park team that no one outside of their local district had ever even heard of, to becoming mainstays in the Bundesliga for the last 15 years, which is one of Europe's big 4 leagues, finishing as high as 3rd, above former European champions like Borussia Dortmund and Hamburg, and competing in the Champions League group stage, where they twice drew with Lyon and only lost narrowly against Manchester City. A reminder, in case it were needed, that Hoffenheim is a village football club, who hadn't even played league football prior to the 2000s. It would be fair to say that if I popped down to train with Hoffenheim, I would look a little bit more out of place. And I suspect even the reserves wouldn't want me. Hoffenheim now have a 30,000-seater stadium, capable of holding 10 times the village's population. They have employed world-class managers like Julian Nagelsmann, Ralf Rangnick and Hansi Flick, and they appear to be well-positioned to make a return to European football this season. Oh, and did I mention that everyone absolutely hates them, and their owner is about as despised in Germany as Napoleon was in the early 1800s? No? Ah, well, I suppose I've got some explaining to do. Fortunately enough, that's what today's video is all about. So sit back, relax, and join me on a journey to the little old village of Hoffenheim, which is famous for virtually nothing but its football club, as we take a look at TSG 1899 Hoffenheim's rise from absolute nobodies to dislodging some of Germany's biggest clubs from cities of millions, how they did it, and why they, and their owner, are so widely despised. Hoffenheim is synonymous, possibly more so than any other club in world football, with just one man. That man is 83-year-old software engineer Dietmar Hopp, whose influence runs through the middle of Hoffenheim, and, by extension, through the middle of this video, like the name of a seaside resort runs through a stick of rock. Hopp was born in Heidelberg, which is the nearest city to Hoffenheim, about 20 kilometers away as the crow flies, in 1940. Hopp's father was a Nazi, and by that, I don't just mean that he was a German soldier during World War II, or that he was once caught with his arm raised in an unfortunate position. No, Emil Hopp was a Truppführer, a troop leader in English, of the Nazi brown shirts, who led his own local division of the SA. Under Emil's command, Hoffenheim's local Nazis destroyed a synagogue in the nearby town of Baden-Baden during the infamous Kristallnacht, or Night of the Broken Glass, in November 1938, a pogrom against Jews carried out by the SA in a prelude to the Holocaust. Hopp studied telecommunications engineering in Karlsruhe, and after graduating from university, he became a software engineer at IBM. In 1972, Hopp, along with 4 other former IBM colleagues, founded the software company SAP. Hopp served as SAP's CEO from 1988 through to 1998, was chairman of the company's supervisory board from 1998 to 2003, and he sat on the board for another 2 years after that. Even after stepping down from SAP's board in 2005, Hopp retained his 10% stake in the company, which has since been diluted to closer to half that amount. In a business currently valued at over 180 billion euros though, that still gives Hopp and his family a healthy net worth of in excess of $10 billion, making him one of the 250 richest people in the world. A lifelong football fan, Hopp began playing in Hoffenheim's youth department at 14, and by 17, he was already representing the first team. Hopp claims to have played more than 200 games for Hoffenheim as a striker, but the level that Hoffenheim were playing at the time dictates that not even the owner of the club can verify that claim. Even the Germans weren't keeping record of 9th-tier village football clubs in the early 1960s. Hopp had to leave Hoffenheim when he went to university, representing Karlsruhe's university team instead, but he never drifted far from his boyhood club. Many years later, during the late 1980s, by which stage Hopp had become a Hoffenheim fan rather than a player, Sapp's success had already made him an extraordinarily wealthy man. In the 1988-89 season, when Hoffenheim were relegated back down into the Kreisliga A, following just a single season in the 7th tier of German football, Hopp decided to intervene. Initially, he just functioned as a sort of wealthy local benefactor, supporting Hoffenheim's youth teams that he once played in, and various minor infrastructure upgrades. But after witnessing the club's relegation, Hopp realised that he could make a real difference. Hoffenheim returned to the 7th tier in 1991, thanks to Hopp's investment, and once again, they would only stick around for a single season. This time, however, it wasn't because they were immediately relegated, but rather because they earned back-to-back promotions, reaching the dizzying heights of the Landesliga, the regionally divided 6th tier of German football. But Hopp wasn't done there. As his personal fortune rose, so too did the fortunes of Hoffenheim, and following yet another promotion to the 5th tier in 1996, Hoffenheim began a rapid process of professionalisation. Peter Hoffmann, a fellow Heidelberg native of Hopp's, who had been involved with the club for more than 20 years already, was appointed as Hoffenheim's first club president. He would go on to lead the club, getting re-elected on 8 separate occasions, until his death in 2020, at which point he was the longest-serving president in the Bundesliga. The pace of Hoffenheim's rise was truly remarkable. In 1998, Hoffenheim's reserve team, which was only founded on Hopp's watch, won promotion to the Kreisliga A. Just 9 years after Hoffenheim's first team's relegation to that league had prompted Hopp's intervention and vast investment. In 1999, in response to Hoffenheim's rise and in an effort to aid further growth, Hopp built a brand new 5,000-seater stadium in the village, which was aptly named the Dietmar Hopp Stadion, given that Hopp had privately financed the stadium's construction and subsequently leased it to the club at a nominal rate. It was a bold move given that, at the time, despite winning 3 promotions in 8 years, Hoffenheim was still only able to attract a few hundred fans to their home games. At the turn of the millennium, Hoffenheim were promoted again, reaching the 4th tier Oberliga Baden-Württemberg, and they sent out a real statement of intent to the rest of their new division with the appointment of Hansi Flick. Flick wasn't experienced in management, he was just 35 at the time, and his only coaching experience was 4 years as a player coach at Victoria Bammental, but he brought with him experience of what it takes to compete and win at the very highest level. Flick made over 100 appearances over 5 seasons playing for Bayern Munich between 1985 and 1990, during which time he won 4 Bundesliga titles and started in a Champions League final. Whilst Flick was starting in the biggest game in European club football, Hoffenheim was still a park team. They were a wholly amateur organisation right up until 1992, just 8 years before Flick arrived. Working alongside former Hoffenheim midfielder Alfred Schön, Flick implemented a fast, attacking, and high-intensity style of football that would become synonymous with Hoffenheim throughout their rise through the divisions. It was a style which chimed well with Hoffenheim's young squad, and in Flick's first season, and Hoffenheim's first ever in the 4th tier, they won a second successive promotion as champions. Though Hopp ensured that Hoffenheim were the highest spenders on both transfers and wages in every league that they competed in until their eventual ascent to the Bundesliga, he invested significantly more money in the club's infrastructure and youth development. Hoffenheim's rapid rise had raised one or two eyebrows within German football, but it wasn't until December 2003, when they shocked Bayer Leverkusen in the DFB Pokal, that the club first made national headlines. Lucio and Dimitar Berbatov, two fantastic full internationals, both found the back of the net for Leverkusen, but it was the third-tier village team who ran out 3-2 winners. Behind the scenes, Hopp's latest pet project was a state-of-the-art training centre, which opened its doors ahead of the 2004-05 campaign. Fit for a Bundesliga team, it was a sign of Hopp's ambition. And the following season, Hoffenheim's under-19s won promotion to Germany's top flight of youth team football. It was also a sign of Hopp's ambition, and indeed his impatience, that after a fourth failed attempt to win promotion to the second Bundesliga, and with the 2005-06 season not going as planned, Hansi Flick was sacked. By this stage, anyone paying any attention was well aware that Hopp, and by extension Hoffenheim, had very deep pockets, but no one anticipated the calibre of Flick's replacement. Ralf Rangnick had guided Schalke to a second-place finish in the Bundesliga in the 2004-05 season, and the season before joining Hoffenheim, he had guided the German Giants to victories against Fenerbahce and PSV, and a draw with AC Milan in the Champions League. Hopp managed to convince Rangnick, with the help of what one suspects was a rather healthy 5-year contract offer, to go from managing the second best team in Germany in a 62,000-seater sold-out every week stadium to a team in the country's third tier whose brand new stadium only accommodated 5,000 fans, and fewer than half of that amount, on average, ever actually turned up. It was the coup to end all coups, and Rangnick was given the license to craft Hoffenheim in his own image. The club already had a focus on youth and a reputation for playing attacking football, but Rangnick took both to another level. When he arrived, Hoffenheim had neither a medical nor a scouting department. Rangnick soon changed that. Already with more than 20 years of managerial experience under his belt, Rangnick was even more impatient than Hopp, and he made clear to Hoffenheim's money man exactly what needed to be done to realise both of their ambitions. When Hoffenheim's more experienced players failed to buy into his bold ideas, Rangnick quickly discarded of them, deciding to focus from that point on solely on more malleable young players whose market value could skyrocket with the right development. Following Rangnick's first summer in charge then, the oldest player that Hoffenheim signed on his watch was 24-year-old Swedish defender Per Nilsson. By and large, everyone else was only 19, 20 or 21. Rangnick's youthful Hoffenheim team won an immediate promotion to the second Bundesliga. Ahead of life in the second tier, Rangnick and Hoffenheim's newly founded scouting departments did one hell of a job. Though Hoffenheim broke the second Bundesliga spending record in their first ever season playing at that level, signing future Brazilian international Carlos Eduardo for €8 million from Grêmio, and spending more than €20 million in total, those eye-watering sums by second Bundesliga standards were invested incredibly well. Alongside Eduardo, who went on to win 6 caps for Brazil, one of them coming in a 1-0 win against England, Hoffenheim also welcomed the likes of Demba Ba, Chinedu Abase, and Vered Ibisevic. They also signed 21-year-old Brazilian prodigy Luis Gustavo on loan from Corinthians Alagoano, and later on a permanent basis after his debut campaign. Hoffenheim assembled the second youngest squad in the second Bundesliga, with an average age of under 23. But in their first ever season in the division, they won a historic promotion to the Bundesliga, sandwiched between two German giants in Borussia Mönchengladbach and Cologne, who were promoted alongside them. Although Hoffenheim had only built their new stadium in 1999 and their new training ground in 2004, following promotion to the Bundesliga in 2007, Hopp decided that it was time to build a second brand new stadium in only 8 years and a second new training complex in 3. On the first, due to Hoffenheim's rapid climb up the divisions, though new, the Dietmar Hopp Stadion fell short of Bundesliga requirements. Instead of renovating the tiny ground, which had routinely sold out for the first time the year that Hoffenheim won promotion, Hopp decided to ride Hoffenheim's new wave of popularity and instead spent a whopping €60 million building a more than 30,000-seater stadium that wouldn't look out of place in Germany's top flight. The Rhein-Neckar Arena, currently known as the Pre-Zero Arena for sponsorship reasons, isn't based in Hoffenheim, but in the nearby town of Sinsheim, about 10 minutes down the road. Nestled in between a thermal baths, a technology museum and an airfield, Sinsheim is larger than Hoffenheim, but you could still fit almost the entire town's 35,000 strong population inside of the Rhein-Neckar Arena. The move suited not just Bundesliga regulations though, but also Hopp and Hoffmann's own ambitions. If Hoffenheim were to grow their fan base from a village of 3,000 people, they would have to expand their catchment area. With the nearest Bundesliga club, Karlsruhe, who were relegated that season, over 45 minutes away, and the next closest, Stuttgart, being over an hour away, Hopp wanted to make Hoffenheim the club not just of 3,000 villagers, but of the entire Rhein-Neckar metropolitan region, which is home to over 2 million people. It was with that in mind, during the mid-2000s, that Hopp had attempted to merge Hoffenheim with two local clubs, relocating the new club to the city of Heidelberg, where he was born, to form a new club which would have been called FC Heidelberg 06. Hopp faced opposition, both from local clubs and from farmers, who demanded several multiples of market value for the land upon which Hopp had planned to build the club's new ground. It was in 2005, when his merger plans finally failed, that Hopp sharply increased his funding for Hoffenheim, immediately preceding Rangnick's arrival, and set about trying to realise his vision, even with what was ostensibly still a village club. Hoffenheim's second stadium move in less than a decade was an important step on that journey, both functionally and symbolically, since it meant that they now had the largest stadium in the region. The club's new training complex was no less important and arguably even more impressive. Hoffenheim might have been an amateur 7th-tier club within the last 20 years, but you would never have known it to look at their facilities. More of a sporting village, ironically, for a football club from an actual village just 3 minutes down the road, Hopp moved Hoffenheim's headquarters and offices to next-door Zusenhausen, as well as building a state-of-the-art training ground. Covering some 7,000 square meters, Hoffenheim moved into their stunning new premises in autumn 2009, while retaining their training centre in Hoffenheim that opened in 2004. The stadium move, meanwhile, freed up the Dietmar Hopp Stadion to become the new home of Hoffenheim's reserve team, and, since 2013, Hoffenheim's women's team as well. Hoffenheim too, incidentally, currently compete in the Regionalliga Südwest, the 4th tier of German football, a level which Hoffenheim's first team only reached for the first time in their entire history at the beginning of the 2000s. 15 years on from the construction of Hoffenheim's complex in Zusenhausen, it is still one of the most impressive facilities in the Bundesliga, accompanied by some of the most cutting-edge research, training methods, and data analytics in German football. Though Hoffenheim always had an inbuilt financial advantage in the lower leagues, Rangnick insisted that, in order to compete in the Bundesliga as a village club, Hoffenheim would have to somehow distinguish themselves from everyone else. Hoffenheim had already had success with young players, both from their own youth ranks and by targeting the recruitment of young players with high potential, but this was an attempt to double down. The TSG Research Lab, built on site, is possibly the single most advanced football research centre in Germany, though it has since broadened its research beyond Hoffenheim's primary business. Having created innovative ways in which to improve the speed of young players' vision, awareness and decision-making, the research lab carried out further studies into whether similar practices could be applied to other industries, creating novel training programs for professions like firefighters, which they consider capable of making real-world differences in emergency situations. Within football, Hoffenheim's methods have already been vindicated. In the last 10 years, Hoffenheim have won the South-Southwest division of the under-19 Bundesliga 4 times, which is more than any other club. That's not bad going when one considers that the South-Southwest division also contains the likes of Stuttgart, Eintracht Frankfurt, and Bayern Munich. After 10 wins from their opening 13 games, Hoffenheim once again lead the table so far this season. Though still in its infancy, wherever you look in European football, you'll feel the impact of Hoffenheim's youth ranks. Everton's Amadou Onana, Borussia Dortmund duo Gregor Kobel and Niklas Zula, and RB Leipzig star Christoph Baumgartner all began their careers with a village club. Bologna's Stefan Posch, Leverkusen's Jonas Hoffmann, and Brighton's Pascal Gross did likewise. In terms of those who didn't start out at Hoffenheim, but were nonetheless developed there from an early age, the likes of Roberto Firmino, Joelinton, and Kerem Demirbay have all enjoyed great success, as well as earning Hoffenheim an absolute fortune upon their departures, as did Leeds United's record signing Jorginho Rutter, who was signed by Hoffenheim for €750,000 and sold for £35 million, all in the space of less than 2 years. It is a business model that has made Hoffenheim far less reliant on Hopp's money in recent years, which is something that we will come on to in a moment. Hoffenheim began their maiden Bundesliga campaign like a seasoned super club, winning all but 4 of their first 15 Bundesliga matches. With the Rhein-Neckar Arena not finished until the new year, Hoffenheim spent the first half of the season playing at the Karl-Benz-Stadion in Mannheim, and their players could be forgiven for never wanting to leave. Hoffenheim didn't lose a single game at their temporary home, where they beat Eintracht Frankfurt, Hamburg, and thrashed Borussia Dortmund 4-1. At Christmas, and indeed, even at the start of February, Hoffenheim were top of the Bundesliga table. An injury crisis in the second half of the season saw their form collapse, and they narrowly missed out on European football, but a 7th place finish was beyond even Hopp's wildest expectations. Rangnick resigned in January 2011 after Brazilian midfielder Luis Gustavo was sold behind his back, and having had just one manager for nearly 5 years, Hoffenheim proceeded to go through 6 in less than 2. For a club that had been so stable, the tumult knocked them off course, and very nearly saw them relegated in the 2012-13 campaign. A shock 2-1 win away at Borussia Dortmund on the final day of the season, courtesy of 2 goals in the last 13 minutes, prevented Hoffenheim from being automatically relegated. And in the Bundesliga relegation and promotion playoffs, they managed to overcome 4-time German champions Kaiserslautern 5-2 on aggregate. At this point, it is probably worth addressing the elephant in the room, namely, why everyone hates Hoffenheim, and in particular Dietmar Hopp. In the English psyche, the idea of a local billionaire who used to play for them turning a village club into Premier League and Champions League contenders is fairy tale stuff. It's like living out the wildest fantasies of an ambitious football manager save. In England, we have become hyper-normalised to the idea of football clubs being assets owned exclusively by billionaires, hedge funds or nation-states, and that the fate of each and every club should be entirely dependent upon the will, aptitude and investment of those same billionaires, hedge funds and nation-states. The ownership of English football has become so distorted that the idea of a local billionaire owning a club, like say Tony Bloom at Brighton, is the most romantic ideal imaginable. Well, Hopp is not that dissimilar to Bloom at Brighton or Matthew Benham at Brentford, just on steroids. Figuratively speaking, of course. But in the German psyche, what English football fans might consider romantic is viewed as a kind of death. The very notion of a football club, which is supposed to be a community asset, being entirely dependent upon the whims and wealth of one man or woman, whether that man or woman is Jesus Christ or Mohammed bin Salman, is an anathema to the German view of the game. A phrase that you'll hear a lot from German football fans is financial doping. Basically, the idea that receiving vast external investment, as Hoffenheim have, is just a form of cheating. Although Bayern Munich are broadly disliked by pretty much every other German club, and their hegemony widely considered to be undesirable, there is an acknowledgement that, due to their size and success, Bayern is a revenue-generating machine, and they should be able to spend that revenue as they please, because they earned it, so to speak. A club like Hoffenheim, or RB Leipzig by contrast, the latter of whom are even more vehemently disliked than Hoffenheim, by a couple of orders of magnitude, are only where they are because of artificial investment. Whatever your views on owner funding, that much is inarguable. Hoffenheim, though now very well run, would still be playing park football in Germany's amateur leagues in front of maybe 50 or 60 people were it not for Dietmar Hopp. Another term that you'll hear a lot is plastic club. German football prides itself on tradition and fan culture. For the first 70 years of their existence, Hoffenheim were noteworthy only insofar as just how truly unnoteworthy they really were. Virtually nothing that exists at the club now, beyond their name, preceded Hopp, and Hoffenheim didn't have any fans prior to about 2006, so how could they possibly have any fan culture? There is another reason for the animosity. When one team rises, another must fall. There are only 18 spots in the Bundesliga, and as the likes of Hoffenheim, RB Leipzig, and, before them, Wolfsburg and Bayer Leverkusen have risen, several German giants, resplendent with history, tradition, and fan culture have fallen. The second Bundesliga is now home to more former German champions than the Bundesliga itself. The likes of Hamburg, Kaiserslautern, Hertha Berlin, Nuremberg, Hanover, and Fortuna Düsseldorf all find themselves languishing in the second Bundesliga these days. Meanwhile, Schalke are at risk of dropping into the third Liga, and 1860 Munich are already there, and they have been for the last 5 years. There is a mixture of distrust and resentment towards the Bundesliga's plastic clubs then, and German football fans, and particularly ultras, have never been known for keeping their feelings to themselves. In 2020, Bayern Munich fans brandished a banner of Hopp which was captioned "Du Hurensohn," meaning "you son of a bitch" or "son of a whore." The match was halted for 13 minutes and almost abandoned after Bayern's ultras refused the pleas of their own players to take the offending banner down. Cologne supporters drew upon a similar theme back in 2017 with 2 banners, one depicting Hopp's mother as a prostitute and another his father as a Nazi. That one was at least 50% accurate, though Hopp, perhaps unsurprisingly, didn't particularly appreciate it. Another game between Hoffenheim and Borussia Mönchengladbach was nearly abandoned after Gladbach's ultras displayed 2 banners, one depicting Hopp caught in crosshairs, and another stating, "Sons of whores insult a son of a whore and get punished by sons of whores." That was a reference to the DFB, Germany's football association, banning Borussia Dortmund supporters from travelling to Hoffenheim for 2 years due to persistent anti-Hopp banners which drew upon similar themes. No team supporters have been more vocal in their opposition to Hopp and all that he and others like him stand for than Dortmund's. It would be fair to say that Hopp, who is beloved in his own region for both his financial backing of Hoffenheim and several worthy charitable causes, hasn't always taken criticism from other team supporters particularly well. Hopp has previously written to the DFB and the Bundesliga, complaining about the level of abuse that he has received, claiming that it should be treated the same as racism and other forms of discrimination. Hopp, presumably, thinks that the B in BAME stands for billionaires, and that being the billionaire bankroller of a village football club constitutes a protected characteristic. It is certainly arguable that some of the criticism aimed at Hopp has overstepped the mark, at least of polite society, if not necessarily targeted harassment, but some of the pearl clutching from Hopp and his acolytes has been borderline nauseating. Hopp's motto is not so much Millwall's infamous tagline, "No one likes us, we don't care," but more, "No one likes us, and I'm actually rather upset about it." Admittedly, it doesn't have quite the same ring to it on the terraces. The Bundesliga and the German press love to play upon German football's ultras as a marketing ploy and unique selling point, but they get a little bit antsy and uncomfortable when those same ultras start to espouse any of their founding or fundamental principles. The 50+1 rule in Germany is supposed to ensure that supporters, through memberships, maintain at least 50% plus 1 share in a club to prevent outside investors from ever acquiring a controlling interest in them. When the rule was introduced, in 1998, Wolfsburg and Bayer Leverkusen were given special exemptions on account of the fact that they had already been owned by private companies in the form of Volkswagen and Bayer for more than 20 years before the new rule came in. When Hoffenheim reached the Bundesliga, they exploited that same loophole, citing Hopp's funding for more than 20 years to exempt themselves as well. That is different to RB Leipzig, who are technically 50+1 compliant, but used a slightly different loophole. Leipzig initially only had 21 members, many of whom were anonymous, but all of whom were believed to have some connection to Red Bull, therefore allowing Red Bull to run Leipzig as they pleased, whilst remaining within the rules. In March, Hoffenheim announced that they would be giving up their exemption and voluntarily joining the 50+1 family. Last week, that decision was ratified by the DFL, and Hoffenheim's more than 11,000 members are now officially the club's majority shareholders. Hopp will continue to financially support Hoffenheim, and of course, the club wouldn't have those 11,000 members, which is still the fewest of any Bundesliga club, other than RB Leipzig, were it not for Hopp's estimated €350 million personal investment in the club, so the perception of them is unlikely to be radically altered overnight. Through their academy, growing fan base, and player trades, Hoffenheim have become much less dependent on Hopp in recent years, though. Since the 2015-16 season, Hoffenheim have actually been the second most profitable club in the Bundesliga, in terms of net spend, trailing only Borussia Dortmund. During that time, Hoffenheim have made a profit of more than €160 million on player trades. Meanwhile, clubs like Hertha Berlin and Hamburg, who have both been relegated to the second Bundesliga, are in the red, having brought in a fraction of what Hoffenheim have managed through player sales. It makes sense that Hoffenheim should look to reduce their dependence on Hopp, not only because it makes business sense and might make them just a little bit less despised by the German public, but also because, without wanting to get too morbid, he is 83 years old. Hopp won't be around forever, and whether his two sons, Daniel and Oliver, will have the same passion or commitment to the club isn't publicly known yet. Over the last 2 years, Hoffenheim have lost €66 million, but in the 3 years prior to that, they posted pre-tax profits in excess of €100 million, and a return to European football this season would likely put Hoffenheim back in the black. In 2016, Hoffenheim made a 28-year-old Julian Nagelsmann the youngest head coach in the history of the Bundesliga. Nagelsmann had been coaching at Hoffenheim since the age of 23, but it was an incredibly brave decision to hand him his first job when Hoffenheim were deep in the Bundesliga relegation zone. When Nagelsmann was appointed, 20 games into the season in February 2016, Hoffenheim had won just 2 games all season. Nagelsmann won 7 of his 14 games in charge though, transforming Hoffenheim's win percentage from 10% before he arrived to 50% and finishing 1 point above the drop. The following season, Hoffenheim qualified for the Champions League. They lost in the playoff round against eventual finalist Liverpool, but the following year, there would be no playoffs required for Hoffenheim after they finished third. Nagelsmann's work inevitably saw him poached, somewhat ironically by fellow plastics RB Leipzig, and Nagelsmann near enough made it a clean sweep of Germany's most hated clubs by joining Bayern Munich in 2021. Hoffenheim fell to 9th in Nagelsmann's final season in 2018-19, and they are already on their 5th manager since he left. Following 3 successive mid-table finishes, Hoffenheim have the opportunity to return to Europe this season, currently sat in 6th place, under American head coach Pellegrino Matarazzo. Perhaps the most extraordinary stat of all about Hoffenheim is that in the 2006-07 season, they had an average attendance of 3,026, roughly half the capacity of the Dietmar Hopp Stadion. By the 2008-09 season, literally 2 years later, they averaged 28,095 fans at their home games, selling out first the Karl-Benz Stadion and then the Rhein-Neckar Arena every week. The reality is that, though Hoffenheim might be a plastic club, who no one would have heard of without hundreds of millions of euros of Dietmar Hopp's money being invested in them, they are, like the Red Bull franchise clubs, extremely well run. And, unlike a club like MK Dons, they have been able to amass considerable support. The Rhein-Neckar Triangle is home to over 2 million people, and Hoffenheim is their only Bundesliga club. How durable that support will prove once Hopp is gone and Hoffenheim potentially have to stand on their own 2 feet, or in the event of neighbouring clubs like Mannheim becoming more competitive, still remains to be seen. But for now, Hoffenheim will remain both the smallest locality with a top-flight football team in any of Europe's major leagues, equivalent to your nearest village team competing with Arsenal and Manchester United in the Premier League, but also one of the most hated teams in Germany, viewed as an affront to all that is holy in the largely safeguarded German game. That is it for today's video, but thank you all very much as ever for watching. I hope that you enjoyed it. Hit the like button if that was the case, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and of course, go goes without saying. Make sure that you're subscribed and have notifications turned on for both this channel, HITC Sevens, and also my second channel, Alfie Potts Armour, both of which should be about to appear on your screens now, along with a couple of videos that you might enjoy watching after this one. You can also find me on Twitter, Instagram or Threads via the username @HITC Sevens on all three, and you should be able to find all of those links down in the video description below, should you wish to do so. Cheers.